When you think about government contracting, and today we're going to be talking about relationships, one of the questions I want to get you to ask yourself, not just about today's training, what we're doing, but across the entire aspect of your business, whether it's your employees or certain other areas of your business, I want you to ask yourself a question, this question, right? What's the one thing that you can do that by doing it will make everything else easier or unnecessary? What's the one thing that you can do that by doing it will make everything else easier or unnecessary? As it relates to beating out your competition, standing above your competition, and going out and winning more contracts, I submit to you that it's building relationships. If you build relationships, it opens the door to everything. It opens the door into the sales activity you want to do, into the agencies you want to do. It helps you with staffing. It helps you with trying to write better proposals because you'll team up with people who might be able to do an aspect of the proposal better than you can do it. Building relationships, having relationships is, in my opinion, the most important thing that you can do. And when you do it, it will make all aspects of your government contracting efforts, whether you're a brand new company with one person, two people, or whether you're a billion-dollar company, it is all the same thing. Relationships will make all of it easier. And so the more relationships you have, for sure, the more successful you're going to be. And that's what I want to cover down on and talk about today. I did want to talk about just an example of how powerful relationships are. I have two different customers, and something came up, and I was like, oh, they both knew me. And so they were able to get introduced through me to be able to work together. And the three of us did some stuff. Now I'm out of the picture. I'm not paying attention. And they are going after other things together because they have a relationship. And it was just an easy relationship for them to develop. They got introduced. They could have done it themselves. And I'm going to give you tips today on how to start and build new relationships so that you're constantly keeping those relationships fresh. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. And I also described this as just, the number one thing you can do that's going to help you stand above your competition out there. So in today's training, I'm going to cover down on 5 main areas. First, I just want to remind us, in case we're really not thinking about it, why are relationships so important? Sometimes we just say it, we go, yes, we know relationships are important, but let's remind ourselves some of the key ways relationships can help us. And by the way, it also helps make us a good relationship to somebody else when we realize what we could be doing for our relationships. The second thing I'm going to cover down on are the 3 levels of relationships. I'll talk about that, kind of the maturity, if you will, of relationships. Third thing I want to cover down on the type of relationships. And this is really the who of relationships. Who could you go out there and build relationships with? The fourth bullet here I have, and I want to talk briefly about this, but there's this idea of the power of focus. If you focus in on a particular relationship development activity, for example, I'm going to develop relationships with people in the Navy. I'm going to develop relationships with people in Atlanta, Georgia. Similarities to that focus, right? When you build relationships with a focus, you can build a lot more related relationships, which makes all the relationships stronger and your ability to actually help them even more. And then I'm going to wrap up with how do you get started with relationships, right? That's what I'm really trying to say when I say, how do you develop new relationships? How do you get them started? I'm going to give you that guidance on there. So that's what we're going to cover down on today. If you don't know who I am, my name is 𝗕𝗂𝗧𝗏. I want to welcome you to my federal sales training where I provide training in the federal market. And sometimes when I'm doing it live, I have a complete brain freeze. But let's just roll with it, right? I'm glad you're here. I do federal sales training all the time. For 20 years, I was a small business government contractor. And since 2018, I've been teaching people like you that government contracting is not a secret. It's just a process. When we follow the process A to Z, we're going to have repeatable, predictable results. That's what I want for you. It's kind of what I'm going to teach you today as it relates to relationships. How can you have repeatable, predictable results in relationship building? So that's what we're going to cover down on. That's what I cover down on in these trainings. And we do these trainings every single weekday. Been doing them for the last 2 years. I've been doing them since 2018, but really heavily since the last 2 years. We've done over 450. So make sure you go watch the replays. They're available to you for free. If you haven't already subscribed to our newsletter, subscribe to the Government Contracting Success newsletter. It's the largest one on LinkedIn by double. And we provide nothing but content that helps you grow your company, whether it's content around federal sales tips, or it's information inside of an agency, like I mentioned earlier, how to get registered at NASA or how to get registered with Army Contracting Command. Plus, I do a ton of deep dives into budgets, strategic documents, trying to help you do your homework into a program office. I wanted to thank the 140 plus people who registered for training today. I really appreciate when you do that. It's a simple thank you to us. And so thank you for thanking us. The other thing is when you register, LinkedIn pushes the word out to more people out there who might be interested in government contracting training, right? Federal market training. And so they join us. And not only do they come for my training, but they build our network. We started off doing these lives. We had like 10 people in them, 20 people in them. This week, we've had no day less than 200, including today. We just passed 200. So we have 200 people live, but multiple days we've had over 400 people. That's your network. I'm excited to be able to be a facilitator to build that for you so that you can look into the chat and into the people who have registered for training and see who might be a fit for, ironically, networking and developing relationships. So thank you for doing that. If you haven't done that, please consider doing that next week when we announce all our new trainings over the weekend. Okay, let's get diving into talking about why relationships are so important. I've got 22 minutes to cover this since we end at 12:30, but relationships are vital. I love networking. It's my favorite thing. Actually, it's 100 times easier for me to help than to ask for help sometimes, but even that is so rewarding. They say do what you love to do, and I love helping people, and so I'm in heaven with this job that I do. So relationships, right? When you think about them, one of the, and these are in no particular order, but one of the things they do will open doors for you, either open doors into their agency kind of, or their business. They'll bring you inside of the wire, especially if you're not an incumbent. You really don't know anything in there. And so when you start building relationships, again, it doesn't matter whether it's industry or government, you'll begin to learn about their company or an agency. So you might be able to learn about an agency, obviously, from government personnel who are in there. But if you build relationships with industry partners or industry companies that are in the Army, as an example, you start learning more about the Army from their perspective. They're inside the wire. We call it inside the wire, right? Meaning you're an incumbent or you're working for that agency. So you learn more about it. Building relationships allows you to benefit from their knowledge. The third bullet, they'll listen to your recommendations. And this is in particular for agency relationships. When you develop relationships within the federal market, within the government agency, you're going to be able to influence their thinking. They actually want to be influenced. They want input from industry. And so you have this ability to make that input. But if they don't know who you are, or if they don't have a relationship with you, they're not going to really take your recommendations. But once you build relationships in a program office, you can start guiding them down different directions they might consider. If they're, using certain type of elevators, you might talk to them about, hey, in 3 years, you're going to be replacing them, or 4 or 5 years, you're going to be replacing them. I really want you to think about this manufacturer instead of this one because they do this. And it's the same thing in professional services or IT. Contracting officers, you might be able to influence them on, hey, I notice you haven't awarded a single contract on STARS 3, a big IT contract vehicle. Can we talk about it? Can I find out why you haven't got training yet to use it? Things like that. When you have the relationship with them and they know and like you, they will begin to listen to your recommendations. And I already mentioned number 4, right, where they'll talk about contract vehicles or woman-owned, set-aside, et cetera. When you have the relationship, you can have more of that dialogue. And sometimes they won't set it aside, but they'll at least listen to you and consider it. On industry side, right, you want to get invited into partnerships. And I'm going to talk a lot more about this in a minute. But you want to get invited to join teams that are going after particular opportunities. I was on a call this morning with a customer who's going after a particular contract vehicle, and we were discussing whether they would prime it or sub it. And the reality is, when you have relationships, you'll start getting invited in. Today's training is not about small and large subcontracting, but I teach that a lot. And one of the things I say about large businesses is that when you're at the right position, they'll invite you in. And so if you develop relationships as you go along, at some point you'll start finding you're getting invited in. They start seeing your value and want to bring you onto their team. But it begins with them knowing you and then liking you. And that liking is where the relationship begins to go, trust and like you. They'll tell you about opportunities. This is a huge one, right? We want to fill our pipelines. There's so many opportunities that come out that we're just not aware of. They come out on different vehicles, or they come out when I was on vacation, I wasn't tracking it, whatever it is. But when you have relationships, especially strategic relationships, the more of them you have, the more chance you're going to hear about opportunities that you could support. Either you could prime or sub, but you're going to hear about these opportunities because these relationships, these people you have begun to build a relationship with will know what you do. This is why I say in the chat, put your company name, put your core competency. Try not to put a lot of stuff. The less stuff you put, the easier it is for me to remember. For example, Bain Group, they do SharePoint, Microsoft Office 365 development type stuff. If I look at Graham, who's in here probably today, they do water management. They do American Sign Language, admin support. I know what they do. And so there's a lot of companies that are in here that if you take the time to put your information in, they will begin to know who you are. And as relationships develop, they might bring you into opportunities, at least just even tell you, have you heard about this? And the last one is they'll make referrals. And this is a big one for trying to get further into an agency. Them introducing me, it's one of the things I say is, if you can't help me, well, who can, right? And so I might want to get referred to somebody further in an agency. That's a typical path when you talk to a small business specialist saying, hey, can you introduce me to the contracting officer? Can you introduce me to the program office? But I've got a customer that I connected with a company that's a large prime that I do work with or guide, and they're a large prime contractor. And but what I taught my customers is to talk to this person I'm introducing you to so that they will then refer you further into their organization. And that happens when you build a relationship with that first person I introduced you to. When they know and like and trust you, you've had a couple of calls, then you can get that referral in, right? And so you have to decide when you ask for the referrals in. But when you have these relationships, it makes it so much easier for other people to refer you. I wanted to talk about the 3 levels of relationships and this idea of, kind of a maturity model. If you think about, for those of us in software side of the house, we have a capability maturity model index, or CMMI, which is the software development maturity model. But there's a lot of models like that just talk about how the more advanced you are, the farther you go. Well, I'm submitting that relationships are the same thing. Relationships can begin at an easy, superficial level, and then as you start engaging more, they move up into a teaming level and then into strategic. So let me talk about this really quick, because all 3 of these are important. And actually, if I start from the back, right, strategic relationships, let me start from the bottom. And the reason I say this is because when I talk with customers in our workshop, what I'm teaching, and actually what I teach in all these free trainings, is that you want 16 strategic relationships. That's my number. I'm like, if you have 16 strategic relationships, I don't care what size company you are, you will hit the goal that you're looking to get in your revenue goal, as long as it's realistic. So if you're 0, you can get to 100,000. If you're 100,000, you can get to $1 million. If you're $1 million, you can get to $5 million. If you have 16 strategic relationships, these strategic relationships, the reason I say 16 is because you can't really handle more. It requires a lot of interaction. It requires meeting with them on a regular basis, following back up, jointly pursuing opportunities, et cetera. But these strategic relationships are around mutual growth. And so those are the most advanced type of relationship you can have, a strategic relationship. And so you want 16 of those. But as you move back, right, teaming relationships and working relationships are, these are government and industry. Teaming relationships are with people that you sometimes pop together and say, hey, let's go after this opportunity, and you go away. You don't really meet on a regular basis. You're not doing anything, but you have had multiple meetings and you're talking. You might have even gone after a couple of opportunities. I have customers who are doing that right now, where I know they're in, they talk, they write a response, they go away, and they don't really talk again at the moment, which is fine, right? It just hasn't matured to a strategic relationship, or maybe it doesn't make sense for either one of these parties to make it a strategic relationship, but they do maintain it at a teaming relationship, saying, hey, we see another opportunity like this, let's go after it together. On the agency side, what I call a working relationship is if you're inside a customer and you're doing work with them, and you see them in halls, you have coffee or something, that's a working relationship. For an agency, a strategic relationship is one where you're really sitting down with them and having conversations about their long-range acquisition forecast. Not that official term, but an example of what I did in my last company is I would sit down with directors of IT, so GS15s or GS14, 15, so branch and CIO level, and have conversations with them about their 5 and 10-year strategy about where they're going with technology. And it's like, well, hey, this is what we're looking at. This is what we recommend you think about. That's a strategic relationship when I can influence them. When I'm just working with them, I have a contract with them, etc. I don't really have a strategic relationship, but I have a working relationship. Theoretically, my goal is to advance that, right? And now back it up to the first bullet, network. Your network can be as big as you want it to be, right? LinkedIn says my network is millions. I would submit that I probably have a network of 100,000 plus in the govcon space of like my network. And your network is like people you can kind of reach out to and talk to and engage. So here's a quick example. We have over 200 people in today's training. This is your network. Whether you know them or not, we're in a common network. Hey, did you go to Neil's training? Yeah, I did. And I'll talk about this more in a minute. But this is your network. So you literally have 200. If you've been here all 5 days, like somebody who just said, hey, day 5, if you've been here all 5 days, then your network is even bigger, because on Monday we had 455 people live. On Tuesday and Wednesday, we had like 200 plus and then 300 plus. Yesterday, we had 487 people live in our training. That was more than I've ever had before. Well, that's your network. It's my network. It's not a close relationship like a teaming or working relationship, but it's our network, our ability to just reach out and say, hey, Stan, I saw you at Neil's training, or I saw you in my training. You know, let's connect so that if we're able to help each other in the future, we've already connected, right? And you can take that one step further, by the way, when you're connected with people, to say, hey, let's have a meeting. But you don't need to have a meeting with everybody, because maybe there doesn't need to be that. But having a network around your college that you went to, or an event like this that you've attended, or the PTAX or the SBA offices that are in your local area, right? That's your network. And as you take your network, you can mature those relationships that you have initially developed into the next level. Okay, so hopefully that made sense on the levels of relationship. I might have gone into it a little longer than I intended, but good stuff. So let's talk about who you can talk to, right? The types of relationships you can have. I just wanted to put down some examples for you to track, right? So if you're experienced at this might be a reminder to you saying, well, do I have relationships in all these levels? And if you're brand new, or really building your relationships out there, I want you to think in these 6 categories that I broke into federal agency relationships and industry relationships. So the first one here is in the federal agency are small business professionals. In sales, we call these folks focuses of receptivity. And what this means is they're receptive to talking to you. Early on, I said, why do you want to have relationships? Well, literally, these people cover down on a lot of those reasons, right? They'll teach you about the agency, they'll get in, happy to help you, but they have no need and no power. The next level are the program office. So these are program professionals, the people who are doing the job that you have. Could be facility managers, could be IT directors, et cetera. These are what we call focuses of dissatisfaction. So a focus of dissatisfaction is the very buyer, right? They're the person who has the need. They're not power. We'll talk about that in a minute. But they have the need. So if you have a product or service that is a solution to needs or problems, right, then they're the ones who have it. That's who you want to be talking to in sales. And so you want to build relationships with program office professionals within your target agency. The next group are acquisition professionals. So this is the contracting officer, et cetera. And these are focuses of power. They're the ones who sign the contract. They're the ones who make decisions on which vehicle they're going after, which set aside. So they're the power on the contract level. And so you want to build relationships with those 3 type of people within federal agencies. Within the industry, there's 3 groups of people I want you to think about building relationships with. And again, you can get started right here in the training today. There's a lot of people. But the first group are small businesses. Small businesses in the federal market range from just getting started, no revenue, 1 person, which is not a bad relationship. It could be a good relationship. For example, there's a guy who has been in our community, and I hope he's still actively involved, but he and I were just chatting again on LinkedIn a few weeks ago. But he's been in our community since I started the chamber back in 2018, I think. And his name is Amit. And when he got in, he did AI, so artificial intelligence, machine learning. He's a doctorate in it, very high level, 1-person company. It was just getting started. That person would be a great person to have on a team if you're $30 million company and you're trying to go after a win and you need a subject matter expert. So don't ever dismiss any relationship depending on the size of the company. You want to build these relationships. So small businesses go from the one person shop all the way up into, let's say the $30 to $40 million range. When they're at that level, they're about to graduate out of small and into large business. So that's a huge, huge pool. In the federal government space, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of small businesses. And so your network are all these people. If you go to an agency event where there's vendor outreach session and you see people around and you're collecting cards, well, that's your network. What you decide to do with your network is up to you. So you got small businesses, then you got large businesses. Obviously, large businesses are any of those smalls I said that graduated. But generally, when I say large, I'm talking about billion-dollar firms as a distinction, right? So let's say $100 million and below, you're still kind of a small. But these billion-dollar firms having relationships out there, these are relationships that take longer to build. Even if you could try to be aggressive, you want to slow build it so that you build a strong relationship. And so you might target contract vehicles, et cetera, and I'll talk about that in a second. The last group that I want you to focus on are enablers. So in the government, we might have an HR mission. We say, hey, here's our strategic goals, and here's some of our strengths, whatever. And here are our technology enablers. These technologies are what we're going to use to execute on our HR mission or on our Army Ranger mission, right? We have technology enablers. An example, when I was in the Rangers, was a GPS unit, right? That was a technology enabler to our job. Because before that, we were just using our compass and going everywhere. Then we had a GPS unit. It was, heaven. And so those are technology enablers. That's actually the first time I heard that term enabler is in government documents. Well, for you, your business enablers are people like me and other consultants like me. It's people like, or it's organizations like the PTAX or Apex Accelerator, the SBA, the SBDC and the Women Business Center, your local chamber, all these groups, all these people, we are enablers to your success. And so you want to build a network and build relationships across all three of these types of business or people in industry. So small business, large, and enablers. Really quickly, I just want to show you this one slide and just say, when you focus on a particular group, in this case, I said a group is around one agency. If you focus on developing relationships in one agency, these people will often know each other. So they'll be able to quickly introduce you to somebody else. A contracting specialist might introduce you to a program manager. Program manager might introduce you to a contract vehicle or a large prime program manager or to a small business that's doing work. An 8A might be able to introduce you to, hey, I got a friend who's a woman-owned small business in the Navy, right? These people can introduce you. And the more relationships you're building, the stronger your overall awareness of the Navy and your ability to succeed in the Navy will be. This could be similar where you get rid of Navy and you just put Atlanta. I want to build relationships with government contractors in Atlanta. Or I might sit there and say Stars 3 instead of Navy. I want to build relationships around that. Might have even said this on this next slide, right? So pick a campaign. Here's how I develop relationships, and I'm just watching my time. How you develop relationships, or how I do it, right, is I pick a campaign. And what I mean by that is that I sit there and say to myself, what's my goal for this effort? Am I trying to get relationships around the Navy? Or am I trying to get relationships around Atlanta so they're local to me? Am I trying to get a bunch of relationships that are SDVOs so I can team together with a bunch of other SDVOs or contract vehicle? Pick that campaign, right? Because when you do, it'll allow you to develop a target list. So an example here that I have is PEO Digital. That is a program office within Naval Information Warfare Center, or NAVWAR, which is inside the Navy, which is inside the Department of Navy, which is inside the Department of Defense, right? So it's way far down. It's not this big group of people. PEO Digital has about 250 people in it, certainly according to LinkedIn, right? And so I can go into LinkedIn and develop a list of 200 people at PEO Digital to start reaching out to. Or this other one is NOAA's Mission Information Technology. I forgot what it was, but it's a contract vehicle. And it's a contract vehicle inside of NOAA for their IT services. Oh, that's what the S is. But there's 25 companies on that contract vehicle. So my campaign might be really small, saying I want to build relationships with the people who are on this contract vehicle, which turns out is really important for NOAA and also used by Commerce, which is the department above NOAA. And so I develop that target list of people and say, I'm going to reach out to them. And so if it's PEO digital, I'll slow walk that and I might engage with them, right? On LinkedIn, et cetera. And then outreach is what I'm saying about the contract vehicle holders. Those folks, I don't mind being a little more aggressive, and I pick up the phone and I call them and say, hey, can I schedule 15 minutes to chat? And so as you move forward, you're trying to develop relationships. Sometimes you can focus it on a particular campaign in order to develop that target list, which makes it easier when you start doing outreach or engagement. This bell curve, the one thing I just want to point out is when you reach out to 100 people, basically 84% of them are going to say no, right? 50% will say no. And the early majority here, 34% will say, not right now. And what they really mean is if you have a friend I know, a mutual friend, then I'll happily develop the relationship with you. But if you don't, I'm a little bit standoffish. And so you want to come to those people once you have other relationships. That's why making relationships that can introduce you to others is really a beautiful path. So here's what I want you to do. Just again, we're wrapping up here at 12:30. Here's 3 things I want you to do that could help you develop 100 new relationships in the next week. First thing is write a draft connection request. What I mean is a LinkedIn connection request. If you reached out to anybody, you should send a note, right? For the most part, you should send a note to the other person saying something that makes them want to connect with you. A little thing, just a little paragraph, not a sales pitch. And so an example of it might be, hey, I saw you on Neil's training. Didn't get a chance to talk in chat, but I'd love to connect if you're open to connecting. That's all I would write. So an example of a draft connection request. Second thing is review my trainings. Review the people in my trainings. You can go look at the people who put comments in today, or yesterday there was like 200 plus comments. You can look at the people who registered for my training. If you also registered, you'll be able to see that whole list, and you can just hit connect and send a note. And so what I'm recommending then is you follow up and connect with 100 people who are in my training, and you can look around and go, okay, I like that one, I like that one, whatever it is, right? You do your own thing. I just look for people to be in the GovCon world because I want to build a broader GovCon network, and then later my relationships will be with people closer to what I'm trying to get done. But I want you to build 100 new connections. When you do these 3 steps, you will not only find 100 new connections, but you will find that your overall network grows more than just 100 people because it includes the people they know. Their friends will begin to know of you. Okay, I hope you found the training valuable. If you did, throw a thanks in the chat for me and my team. If you're interested in working with us, we have a BD Accelerator workshop. It's an advanced workshop that helps you push into an agency, push into large primes, small primes, contract vehicles, et cetera. If that's something you're interested in, just go to govconchamber.com. You can learn more about that on one of our pages over there. For all of us, as we head into the weekend, I hope you have a great weekend. But remember, government contracting is not a secret. It's just a process. I'll see you in the next training.